Hey, so today we're going to develop a smartphone tier list, and this is going to, in theory, free you from your phone addiction. I've been using this now for the past couple of months or so, and it's really helped reduce my phone time and kind of gamified the whole process. So it goes something like this. If you can use your phone from, say, 0 to 5 minutes a day, then it's an S tier result. That's pretty good. It's well under the average of 2 to 4 hours, depending on your demographic. If you can use your phone from between 6 to 15 minutes a day, you still get an A. Still pretty good, right? If you use your phone from 16 to 30 minutes a day, you get a B. If you use it from 31 minutes to 45 minutes a day, you get a C. If you use it from 46 minutes up to an hour a day, you get a D. Anything over an hour, you get an F. You get a big old fail for that. There is no E. And I've been always aiming for an S. On some days I get an A, especially if I'm out somewhere and I need to use maps or something to find directions, then it increases the screen time a fair bit. Or if I have to do banking, I have an online only bank, so you kind of have to use the app on there. So on days when I do that kind of thing, it will increase it. But this whole process has massively reduced my phone time. And the way this started is I noticed when I was kind of keeping diaries on how I felt each day and mood each day, I noticed that on the days I use my phone the least, I experienced more flow, I felt more in the moment, and just generally felt better and happier. And that's as someone who doesn't use social media. So when I say phone use, none of this was Facebook time, Instagram, TikTok. I don't use those apps at all. And so the average phone screen time for me in a day was an hour 45, 2 hours, something like that. But it was all research. So it was mostly search engine use, looking things up, reading things, trying to learn. YouTube, of course, listening to podcasts and talks on YouTube, and it was educational use. But even so, it still develops the same kind of social media effect. It's frantic and you jump from one thing to the next, and it's very unfocused time. And so when I switched from screen time to predominantly reading for my learning time, so I aim for 1 to 2 hours per day of learning, well, now I just do that with reading. And this has had massive benefits. It's only been a couple of months for me, and the results are extremely noticeable. They were noticeable immediately as well. So on the first day, when I went for my S tier, so 0 to 5 minutes, I think I had like 3 minutes that day, which was basically just checking the time, just clicking your phone to open the screen to show you the time. That was pretty much it. I may have sent a couple of messages, but I just noticed an immediate effect. My mind was calmer and I wasn't as frantic in my thinking. I wasn't thinking, what's the next thing that I can search for? What's the next search engine thing? Because my mind was always doing that, especially if I was kind of learning about a topic. So, for example, if it was to do with software development, I'd be learning about a new language, and then I'd constantly be thinking, how can I learn about this? And then I'd look up that thing, and I'd look up the next thing, and before you know it, I was on a big internet wormhole of information which mostly wasn't retained. And that's the other thing I've discovered from doing this in terms of learning. At least for me, the best thing to do is to just do. So you can read and you can listen to all the podcast episodes you want, but until you actually do something that changes your behavior, that actually implements some sort of action, then you haven't really learned anything. And that applies to something even quite theoretical, like, say, software development or music. It's good to have a theoretical base, and I don't reject the notion of learning theory. But by itself, it's useless. You have to follow it up and do something. And those are for theory-heavy subjects. If you want to study something like, let's say, interpersonal skills or relationship skills, even more so, it just takes a lot of practice. If you want to get good at something really specific like conflict resolution, in fact, that's something that I was reading a lot about before I started this project, and I would constantly be reading about conflict resolution and then different psychological and behavioral techniques to come to mutual agreements when there's conflicts. I have I work in a software team, and there's conflicts there. There's conflicts in friendships, there's conflicts in any relationships, and I've always been really interested as to how you can overcome those. But you have to practice, and so now what I do is, well, for a start, I focus on books, and then when something from the book interests me and I want to try it out, then I'll try it in the real world. And some of this stuff takes a lot of practice. Sometimes you can read one concept and you have to spend 3 months on it before you can really move on to the next thing or learn anything else. Another example of this is in JiuJitsu. So I'm a purple belt in BJJ, and I train a lot. Well, I say a lot. I train maybe 6-7 hours a week, so a fair amount. And it's the same kind of trap. You can get stuck in a routine of learning lots of new techniques, but really you can spend months and months on one technique, and years if you really want to master it. If you want to become world class at a single technique, it can take you years to master. And so if you're doing that, there's not really a lot of use in learning 100 other techniques in parallel. So that's something I've changed. I've become more of the notion of being a generalized specialist. So you can have a broad general set of skills, but it's kind of that T-shaped knowledge. So you have a broad spectrum of skills in a field, like let's say software engineering. You could be proficient at multiple languages, but then the T, you have deep knowledge on one or two areas. So maybe you're a full stack developer, and you can write in 4 or 5 languages, but you're a C# expert or you're a JavaScript expert. So that's T-shaped knowledge, or the idea of being a generalized specialist. And I found that kind of model's served me really well, interpersonally, professionally, and in my hobbies. Anyway, a bit of a tangent there, but it does all come back to this phone use, because if you want to be a specialist of any kind, including a generalized specialist, you're not going to do that if you're on your phone for 2 to 4 hours a day. It's just too much of your time is eating up. For some people, that's all of their leisure time. If they are working for long hours, and then maybe they're going to the gym, maybe they're commuting, maybe they're cooking, and then doing all of the other necessary things, sleeping and showering, your 2 to 4 hours might be your whole leisure time. And even if it's not, it's just too significant a chunk to waste on scrolling. So just start to notice. I kind of approach this as a kind of like a food diary. So if you suspect that you have some kind of food intolerance, normally the first thing that's recommended is, before you actually start changing anything in your diet, is you start keeping a diary of what you eat and how you feel after you eat, so that you can begin to identify potential problem foods or intolerances there. And so I'd recommend doing the similar thing with this. Don't change your phone usage just for a couple of days. Instead, install a screen time app, or if you're on, I know like my phone's an Android phone, it has it built in. I don't know about iPhones, but either way, there's loads of free apps there. So figure out how to get a screen time app on your phone, and then put it as a widget on the home screen. So this is a really big thing for me. So on your home screen, you want a widget that shows you the amount of time you've spent on your screen that day on your phone. And so every time you unlock the phone to use it, it's going to show you in minutes how long it's been open for. So when you first open it, it's going to say 0, and then maybe you've checked the time a couple of times in the day or sent a message or two, and it goes up to 2 or 3 minutes. And then at the end of the day, you can have a really quick glance and see where you're at and see which tier you fall into. There is a special tier, which I didn't mention before, which is a S plus or an S star tier. That's 0 minutes. So that's where you don't even have to check your phone at the end of the day to see how many minutes you spent on it, because you didn't touch it, you didn't use it for the whole day. So other benefits of doing this: it will massively improve your relationships. If you have intimate relationships with friends or with romantic partners, you probably spend a fair amount of time in each other's company on your phone. And there was actually a study about this where they had different groups of people, and all they had them do was have a conversation together. So 2 people having a conversation, but in one group, on the table next to them, there was a notepad. And in the other group, on the table next to them, there was a cell phone, a smartphone of some sort. And the phone didn't belong to any of the participants, it was just there. And when asked after the conversations, the 2 groups reported markedly different responses in how connected they felt to the people they'd had a conversation with. So the people with the notepads reported feeling much more connected to the person that they'd spoken to than the people that had a smartphone next to them. And the rationale behind this, the thinking behind this, is it's probably because even though the phone didn't belong to either of the participants, there's an inherent expectation when a phone is there that it's going to do something to interrupt you. It's going to beep, it's going to buzz, it's going to vibrate, it's going to light up. It's going to do something that distracts one of the conversation partners, from the conversation. And so they felt less connected because presumably they were in the back of their mind, maybe unconsciously, thinking, well, this phone's going to interrupt this at some point. Now that's 2 random people in a study with a unidentified phone next to them. So you can imagine the effects that it might have on your feeling of connectedness when you're spending your time with someone who's very close to you, and mid-conversation they pick up their phone to text someone else, or worse still, to scroll through some kind of news feed. I use the word news feed very loosely because there's rarely anything newsworthy in them, but you get the idea. It does improve your relationships, and I've noticed the difference. Now, one of the hurdles you will have to overcome, which comes back to the conflict resolution we were talking about earlier, is you're going to notice even more how much time other people spend on their phone. And it's going to be initially quite difficult for you to perhaps not chastise them or express some kind of anger that they're sat there on their phone in your presence. But you have to realize that this is such a hard addiction for most people. 99% of the population, it's especially in the West now, are hard addicted to their phones. And when I say hard, I don't mean it's a soft addiction where it's like, well, yeah, I could go without it if I wanted to. It's like, no, when you first do this, if you try and get yourself into that S tier of 0 to 5 minutes a day, you'll notice how many impulses you have to pick up your phone and to go on your phone. I had this. You'll realize that it's an addiction because you can't go for a single day without having cravings to do it. So you're addicted to the whole idea, the whole process of picking up your phone and looking at it and just moving your thumb up and down to scroll through something. You don't really care what it is, as long as there's something. Another big technique I've got to making this work is to grayscale your phone. So on Android, at least, you can go into the accessibility settings, and there's a color correction setting. And this is for colorblind accessibility users. But you can kind of hack this, go into color correction. There's an option there for grayscale. I highly recommend turning that on. If your phone doesn't have it natively, which would be very surprising, I'm sure there's apps which will overlay apps which will do this for you. But certainly on Android, that's an option, and I'd imagine on iPhones too. So if you grayscale your phone, you're going to remove a lot of the power from the developers, especially in terms of the widgets they put on your home screens. So if you notice all of the main social media apps you have on your phone, so Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, they all have very, very bright colors, bright red, blue, yellow, pink. They're all really bright, contrasting, high contrast colors. And they do that to attract your attention because you can't help but look at those colors and it grabs your attention. So if you grayscale your phone, you've taken that power away from them. And when you open your phone, to be honest, it's a lot less appealing. Even if you do, I have watched YouTube videos since I began this, and on my phone, and they don't look as nice. They're grayscale, so they're not as appealing to look at. So you don't want to do it as often. So that's a great benefit. So this whole process is really simple. All you have to do is grayscale your phone, write out the tier list or just memorize it. It's very easy because it's increments of 15 minutes once you get to 15. And then pick what you're going to aim for each day. If you don't think you can go all out and go for the S tier straight away, then maybe you start off with a B tier. But I'm a very kind of cold turkey, all or nothing type person, so I have to either be all in on something or not at all. So for me, aiming for say the B tier, trying to go for 30 minutes a day-ish, that wouldn't really work for me because it's too easy to turn into 45, which turns into an hour and a half. So having that hard cut off for me of 5 minutes has been really useful. So give this a go. See how you get on. Let me know how you get on. Tell your friends about it, but don't preach it, especially if you do well, which I'm sure you will. If you do well and you're 2 months in, like I am, and you're hardly using your phone anymore, and you're reading more, and you're speaking to people more, just tell people passively about it, because people will show an interest. I haven't really preached this to anyone until now, I guess. Although, again, I'm not telling you have to do this. I'm just telling you it will benefit your life a lot. And one of my core values in life is being free from addiction. And the reason for that is because one of my deeper core values is freedom. Freedom is probably freedom and autonomy are in my top 3 values. And so you can't have freedom with addiction. Addiction is inherently chaining and binding. So for example, if you have a coffee every morning, if you're addicted to caffeine, it restricts your freedom in some way, maybe in some small way, but you have to have that coffee every morning or you can't get started. And worse still, if you go 24, 48 hours without a coffee, you start experiencing withdrawal. So migraines, lack of energy, all the rest of it. And these addictions, they seem small. So, it's just a coffee. It's just 2 minutes out of my day. It's just my phone. It's just a couple of hours a day. But when you add them all up, the sugar, the caffeine, the phone use, all of these other seemingly soft addictions, they all add up, and you realize that you're just spending the day jumping from one hedonistic high to another and not really getting anything done because they're distracting you and using up your mental bandwidth as well. So that's my motivator for this. I recommend it be yours because it's a great motivator to say, I don't want to be addicted. I want to be free from this, and especially something as powerful as a smartphone, because it does so many things for you. It can navigate, it can do your banking, it can give you any information you want, it can entertain you. So when you rely on it for all of these things, it just becomes a part of you, and that's basically what it is now. If you go to a concert now, you sadly see most people are watching the concert through their phone. If you look at people on public transport, on a train or something like that, you'll see that almost everyone there is spending the whole time on their phones, and they're usually just doing one motion, which is this. One final thing about this is communication. So one of the objections, or rather questions, I suppose, I had from a close friend who was inquiring about this, said to me, well, I like the idea, but I speak to my friends very frequently on my phone. I message them on WhatsApp, pretty much all day. That's most of my phone time. And they kind of said, I don't want to give that up. But one thing to bear in mind is that sort of communication is low bandwidth. It doesn't really add much value to the relationship on an ongoing basis. Sending GIFs or quick messages like "Hi, how are you?" which doesn't really have any substance to it, doesn't add much to your relationship. What does add a lot to your relationship is, well, ideally seeing someone face to face, but if you really can't do that, is at least speaking to them on the phone and hearing their voice and hearing the intonation when they speak, and them being able to hear the same in you. So I've been doing that a lot more. I've spent a couple of hours on the phone to friends that I would normally just WhatsApp, and I've got a lot more from it. I will say that I don't include that in the screen time. So if I use my phone to call a friend, I'll lock the phone and put it on speaker, or use some Bluetooth headphones, and I'll speak to them, so it doesn't log it as screen time anyway, and I don't really count that as smartphone use, because, well, I guess calling them phones is kind of misplaced anyway these days, because that's rarely what we use them for. So actually using them as a phone, I think is fine if it's a way to build relationships and maintain your existing ones. But yeah, most of the time we spend on our smartphones is not making phone calls, it's scrolling. So call your friends more, ideally see them in person, and you have to ditch the instant messaging as well for this to work. So it's a tough one, because you start getting that FOMO, which is what social media companies like Facebook rely on. They want you to have that fear of missing out. They want you to feel that if you don't go on there and post what you're doing, and you don't go on Messenger and message your friends or look in the group chat, that you're going to be missing out, because it engages you with their product. So it's probably one of the hardest ones, but you have to give it up. It's better if you tell people, otherwise people can get offended, which is a crazy thing if you think about it, because it's quite a new, novel thing that we've become accessible 24 hours a day, and now people will actively get offended or upset at you if you don't respond to them within a few hours. But if you explain that to people that are close to you and say, look, I'm doing this thing, I'm trying to get a S tier on my phone usage screen time every day, then they'll be understanding. You might encourage them to join you on the journey, and if not, at least it helps you break free of the addiction. So good luck. Let me know how you get on in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please like it, and I'll be having some more videos soon that's going to delve a lot deeper into addiction and how to overcome other addictions, not just your smartphone one, but one thing at a time. This is probably the biggest one in your life, so overcome this first, do this now, and then we'll tackle the next one. Thanks for watching.